That afternoon, the sun hung high in the sky, burning the skin of anyone who dared to challenge it. The sky was so bright, as if it did not want to share its shade with the dry and dusty earth. In the middle of the expanse of bare rice fields, the remains of a recent harvest, an old figure was standing among the scattered straw. An old woman, her body small, her back hunched, and her skin blackened by time and the sun. The shabby cloth wrapped around her body was barely able to protect her from the biting heat of the day. Her steps were slow, careful, as if every movement was a struggle between her spirit and her body that had long been tired. Her wrinkled and trembling hands kept pushing aside the straw, raking up the grains of rice that had escaped the harvester's sickles. She did not care about the dust flying around or the mosquitoes that circled her body. She only focused on one thing: the remaining life that could still be collected, held, and taken home. There was no one to accompany him, except the sound of the wind and the rustling of straw. There was no eye that paid attention, except for the sun that shone cruelly and silently. But he did not complain. No words came out of his lips, only a long sigh that blended with the sound of the wind in the vast field. On his face was a deep resignation, but also a determination that could not be explained by logic. In other places, maybe people were resting, enjoying the harvest, chatting in laughter. But not with him. Life had taught him that not everyone gets the same share, that sometimes a person must look for crumbs of hope from the remains that others have thrown away. That's what he did, making a living from crumbs that were considered meaningless. Every grain of rice he found was a small victory. In that handful was rice for tomorrow, there was hope to survive, there was a reason to keep getting up and walking. The empty rice field was not the end for him, it was a testing ground, a place where his determination was tested mercilessly, and he remained standing, though almost fragile, like the last grain at the end of the stalk. Patiently, he stood among the remains of straw that were starting to dry. His old hands held a small tool made of bamboo and iron called ani ani, an old heritage that is now rarely used, even almost forgotten. His movements were slow but sure, like the rhythm of a prayer that was repeated silently. He plucked the grains of rice that were missed, one by one, as if each grain left behind was a gem that should not be wasted. There were no complaints, only heavy breaths that were exhaled along with the friction of the wind and the rustling sound of dry straw. My steps brought me toward him, slowly and with a sense of reluctance. There was something in the way he worked that made me reluctant to disturb him, as if I were peering into a sacred silence. But curiosity and a desire to understand drew me closer. He recognized my presence, turning to me with deep eyes, eyes that had seen too many seasons and losses, yet held a small, inexplicable gleam. My mother used to use this ani ani too, he said, showing the small tool in his hand. She said, if our hands can still hold and the intention is still there. The remaining rice left behind, she said, was simply given by the owner of the rice field. There was no price, no conditions, only a whispered blessing, just take it, rather than throwing it away. That simple sentence might not mean much to most people. But for the old woman, it was a path to sustenance that she didn't have to ask for. A small, narrow path, but enough for the tired steps that still wanted to walk. He comes every day after the Kor farmers have finished harvesting the rice, carrying an old sack that has been sown dozens of times and a sickle inherited from his mother. No one accompanies him, there is no crowd or laughter of the harvest. Only he, the quiet rice fields, and the vast sky that watches silently. He picks one by one, bending his head for hours, picking with a patience that cannot be bought anywhere. Grain by grain, he collects it like collecting the remnants of memories, about the time when the rice fields were still busy with the sound of hoes, the laughter of children, and sweat that had meaning. He didn't ask for much from life. A small house at the edge of the village, an old stove, a mat to sleep on, and a mouthful of rice were enough to make him grateful. He knew very well that this world was unfair, and life sometimes didn't side with those who worked the hardest. But he didn't get angry. He didn't blame. He didn't demand. He just kept going, like the sun that keeps rising even though it's never praised. I stared at him for a long time. There was something suffocating in my chest. Behind his hunched back and trembling hands, there was an unshakable strength. He did not complain about his fate, did not lament about his old age. He simply picked up what was left, then turned it into life. He knew that sometimes sustenance does not come from piles of rice in a barn, but from simple compassion, from a rice field owner who did not want his rice to go to waste, from the earth that still gives, even if in a very slow and silent way. This afternoon, he will return home with a handful of rice and a little hope, maybe a thin smile hidden behind wrinkles. There will be no cheers to greet him, no praise for his efforts. But the sky will know, the earth will understand, that in the midst of a world that often forgets, there is still one soul who struggles selflessly, for a simple life, for a stomach that is not rumbling, for a tomorrow that might be a little better.
Good.